Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode in the Journey to the Overland Designer series. So the topic for today is something that has been really bugging me for quite a while, and I was going to do one of my commentaries called Singular Expressions, but since I started this series I thought it would be appropriate to kind of discuss it here. And as you probably ascertained from the title of the video, we are going to be discussing what I would call unique or custom dice, not only in board games, but also in miniature games. And just to kind of make sure everybody understands what we're talking about is more and more games that you get nowadays, and I could almost say all of them, or let's just say a majority of them, have went to this new concept of having their own dice with their own unique symbols. Most of the time they're standard D6 dice, meaning they're six-sided. There are some companies that are doing 20-sided dice or 10-sided dice with symbols, but 90% of them are the six-sided. But for what I'm talking about, all of them are basically six-sided dice that have unique symbols on them. And this is not totally new. There were games like Battle Masters, Heroescape, that were usually for kids, kind of designed for kids, that had custom dice. And kind of the reason behind that, at least I assume, is it was kind of easier for kids who kind of learned through images and symbols to associate a sword with a hit and a shield with a block, so they could play a game quicker, right? If you tell a kid you need a 4+ or something to score a hit, that might confuse them. What do you mean by 4+? What does the plus mean, for example? Or they might think they only hit on 4s. So a lot of the manufacturers like Hasbro and Milton Bradley would use these symbols in some of their games, which were designed, that had kind of a combat mechanic, and they were designed for children. Now, you didn't see this in Risk, and you didn't see this in Axis and Allies, because they were designed for adults, right? And they would just tell you, hey, this is what you need to roll on these dice. But what we are starting to see nowadays is this has totally left the realm of being done for the sake of children, right? The games that we are seeing these done in now, this has become basically a corporate decision to create their own dice. Now, I have several problems with this, and that's kind of going to be what this video is about. And I kind of think that a lot of people maybe haven't thought of some of these things, or a lot of people might have this in the back of their heads, but it's kind of like not something you really talk about, around the table before you start a game or after you start a game. And it's certainly not anything that I've heard the critic community address when they're reviewing some of these games. Now, before I get into the problems I have with this, I want to give you a little list of all of the games that I am aware of that either currently or recently or has been announced are coming out, and as far as I'm aware of, they're going to have their own quote special or customized dice. Now, before I give you the actual list, I've got 2 anomalies, and I've got one on the list of games that include custom dice and one on the list of games that do not include custom dice, but I'm going to discuss both of the anomalies afterward. So here is the list of not only games that are out, but games that are actually coming out, all of which use or require custom or unique dice. Dead Zone 1st and 2nd edition, Mythic Battles Pantheon, Conan the Board Game, Massive Darkness, Zombicide Black Plague, Rune Wars, Batman Gotham City Chronicles, Warhammer Shadespire, Fabled Realm, Star Saga, A Song of Ice and Fire, Sword and Sorcery, Highlander, Core Space, and Aristea. Okay, and so some of these aren't even out yet. Core Space, that was a Kickstarter. Aristea was a Kickstarter. Highlander is going to be Kickstarted. A Song in Ice and Fire was a Kickstarter. Star Saga just came out. Fable Realms was kickstarted last year. It should be coming out. Batman Gotham City Chronicles was a Kickstarter. So, and the reason I'm using these Kickstarters and games that are coming out is because I'm trying to show that this is a trend that is already being projected well into the future, that there are going to be more and more of these games that require these custom or unique dice. Now, the games that do not require it, and of course there's a lot of them that do not require it, but I'm talking about games that have either been recently republished, games that have been announced that are coming out, or games that people are currently playing. So on this list we have Necromunda, Warhammer Quest, both versions, Silver Tower and the Shadows over Heldenfell, or whatever it is. Stormcloud Attack by GW, Gangs of Camorra by GW, Deathwatch Overkill by GW, Blood Bowl by GW, Alien vs. Predator, Fallout Wasteland Warfare, that's been announced but it's not out, Guild Ball, and Dungeon Saga. None of those games required you to use custom dice. They all go with either a D6, D20, or whatever a traditional customary die. Now, the two anomalies. The anomaly on the games that don't require it is Boat Action. Now, Boat Action uses custom dice, but it's only a draw mechanic. They're simply used as chits. So they're very replaceable. They're not essential to playing the game. You could actually use chits or coins or anything to represent your side and how many forces you have. But there are custom dice in the game. So I put them in the list that don't require custom dice. But then again, there are some custom dice. Now, on the side that do require it, that is an anomaly, is the miniature game Saga. Okay, and Saga uses dice and battle boards, right, for the game. Now, to actually do the combat, you do not use the dice. You do not roll those actual dice for attacks and defenses. So in that sense, you don't need the dice. But to activate the combat boards and the special abilities of all the armies, which gives Saga its flavor and uniqueness, you gotta have the dice. So all of this being said, right, and we're looking at the landscape, and the question that remains is, okay, well, Dino, what problem do you have with it? And my problems are four. I'm going to give you 4 reasons why I think this is a very bad trend. Not only for us as gamers, but a very bad trend for designers and game developers, okay? Well, if they care. The first thing I think, and this affects us, meaning people who buy and use these games, is the added cost. Now, I actually did a playthrough or a battle report on Dead Zone on my channel. And it was a solo battle report. I was playing both sides. But because of the custom dice that Dead Zone uses, I actually found myself, as I was doing the battle report, of having to find a scrap of paper and write down the symbols one side had gotten so that I could then take their dice and roll them again in the next turn of the game. Right? And this is a problem because 2 people cannot even play Dead Zone out of the initial boxes they sell you. And it's supposed to be a 2-person game. Right? So when I talk about added costs with these custom and unique dice mechanics, there's either one, the added cost, which I incurred, which was having to go buy a whole nother pack of dice, so I didn't have to have chits of paper and pause the game. Or there's an added cost that if you want to play with somebody else, they need to now go buy their own whole copy of the game with both units or both figures or miniatures in it, just so they can have their own dice to use. Or you simply go tell somebody, well, yeah, you can play with me as soon as you pay $10 for your own dice. Okay, which, you know, good luck with that. They don't even know if they like the game, but they have to pay $10 for some dice. Or again, I have to eat it. So that is the first problem I have with it. And to be honest with you, I think that is kind of the heart and the root of why we are seeing these custom dice. It's another item they can sell. It's another component they can put in the shopping cart on their web stores. Okay? And the majority of these, I think that's all there is to it. Right? because the utility of the mechanic of a splash symbol or an axe or an X is totally lost when you're using a 6-sided dice, because there's only 6 sides on your custom dice, and there's only 6 sides on a 6-sided dice. You could just as simply say, well, when you get a roll of 2, that equals 2 hits. If you roll a 4, that equals 3 hits. Right? You can put that right in the table. Right? And I'm going to tell you why that's actually preferable than these dice. Right? Because I know a lot of people might say, oh, well, that's too hard to remember, or that can. Yeah, it will be until you get used to it. But it's still preferable to custom dice. The second reason is confusion, right? And there's no more confusion when you are playing a game with a bunch of custom dice, and say you haven't picked the game up in a while and you're rolling, and one of them has 1 splash, one of them has 2 splashes, and you're in the middle of the game trying to figure out what the heck does the splash mean. Right? What the heck does this symbol stand for? One of the times I saw this most is with Mantic, and I think their new Star Saga game, I think, uses it, where they literally have a splash symbol that means one thing, but then they have a Mantic symbol, as they call it, which is basically a splash that means something else. And so you have to look at the die in the middle of your game and say, well, is that the Mantic symbol or is that the splash symbol? Right? Is that 2 stars in there, or is that just 1 star? What if the dice start smearing off? Right? Then what are you going to do? You know, you are rolling these things, but I think in general, it just adds a level of confusion to these games. Right? When you're playing these games with all of these different symbols on the dice. I know when I was playing Dead Zone, for example, you had certain dice that activate abilities on the leaders or whatever, and I think that's a cool mechanic. I like it, but I constantly had to find myself looking at the ability that it activated to see if it was worthwhile to keep the dice, right, before I would re-roll them. Like, okay, well, let me check that ability again, because that's the symbol for the ability. So there's a level of added confusion. The third reason is a total lack of uniformity or universality, right? When you play with 6-sided dice, they're universal. When you play with 20-sided dice, they're universal. What we are seeing now with these custom dice is you could literally, I would love to see somebody do a board or a table with all of the symbols and icons and iconography that has appeared on these dice. This company uses swords, this company uses axes, this company uses shields, this company uses splots, this company uses stars. This company uses their logo, this company uses blanks. So you've got hundreds of these dice out here now, and there's almost no universal symbol. About the most universal symbol is usually a sword means you hit something. Right? That's about as universal as it gets with these custom dice. A sword means a hit. But depending on what game you're playing, it may mean 1 hit. It may mean 2 hits. It may mean a melee as opposed to a ranged attack. So there's a total lack of any kind of universality or uniformity in the industry. It's not like the industry we go to all these conventions, right? All these big wigs show up at these conventions, and nobody has ever sat down and said, you know what, let's develop a set of universal custom dice, right? These are the type of games that are coming out now. We're concerned about our consumers, and we're going to come up with a set of universal custom dice that will appear in these games, that will have symbols, that anybody that plays these range of games will understand what these symbols mean. And not only that, and this goes to my very last point. This goes to my very last point because it's tied together. It is what I will call lost or missing dice. What are you guys going to do that are buying all of these games? And I can read them off again. A month from now, 3 months from now, a year from now, when you've lost your dice. Okay? Now, you may have an assumption that, well, I'll just reorder a pair from I'll reorder a pair from the manufacturer. What if they're not there no more? Right? We just had 2 or 3 games go out of business in the last year. Wasn't Spartan Games just closed their doors? Wild West Exodus was sold. Games are constantly being sold and traded, and the new people may not like that mechanic. They may just take the miniatures, or they may just take the board game components. So what are you going to do? How are you going to play these games? God forbid you say, you know what? I want to play a game of Dungeon Saga. Right? I want to play a game of Dungeon Saga, and I haven't picked up Dungeon Saga in a while. And you look in your Dungeon Saga and you can't find your custom dice. Now, of course, I think Dungeon Saga is actually one of the ones that doesn't use custom dice, but let's just say Star Saga. Right? You want to play Star Saga 6 months from now. Mantic is nowhere to be found, and you can't find your dice. Now, of course, you're going to say, well, I'll just have to go on eBay and buy them. Yeah, well, how much is it going to cost you on eBay? Because you're going to run into one or two things on eBay. You're either going to get people to have to scavenge their own games to sell them to you, or you're going to get people selling you extra dice that they happen to buy or get their hands on now that they know is as good as gold to anybody that plays that game. How many of the games that we love nowadays that are coming back that we have in our collections, Warhammer Quest, Hero Quest, how many of these games would still be playable that we have on our shelves nowadays if they had these custom dice and we popped them open right now and you look in yours and you see if you have all the dice that came with that game? Right? But when we were growing up, or back in my day, as I always say, you didn't have to worry about that. If the game used a D6 die, you grab one, out of your box. Right? If it needed a D20 or a D10, you just grab one from somewhere. Or you went online. You could go to a friggin' teacher's store and get a D10 or D20 die. But what is anybody going to do when you're buying these games off of thrift shop stores, right? Or Salvation Army stores 5-10 years from now, and you open the game up and you're all excited about playing and there's no dice in there. Right? And a lot of these companies don't even put the distribution in the game. And what I mean by the distribution is they will not tell you that the 6-sided die has 2 axe symbols, 2 sword symbols, and 2 blanks. All they will tell you is what the symbol means. But without that distribution, you can't even make your own dice to match what the original dice look like. Because you have no idea how many swords should be on a 6-sided die, or a 10-sided die, or a 20-sided die. But to me, the biggest threat and the biggest danger by this proliferation of these custom and unique dice is that mechanic, right? Or is that threat? The threat of losing these dice and essentially losing the ability to play these games in the future. Now, I would be lying if I said, well, I'm not going to buy any game with custom dice because I might lose them and then I won't be able to play them in the future. But I will tell you this. If I have a game with custom dice and I pop it open 3 or 4 years from now and I can't find them custom dice, I'm probably going to sell that game. Because there's no way for every single game I have like that I'm going to get on eBay and pay $15, $25, $30, $40 again just to get the dice. And so that's something that has been on my mind about, something I've thought a lot about. I hope you guys like this week's episode. Definitely give me your thoughts. How do you feel about this proliferation of these custom and unique dice? And as one caveat I will tell everybody, I'm not sure how many of you noticed this, but on the list of games, and these are board games that are coming out, box games or board games, that are not using these custom dice, I'd have to say Games Workshop had probably 9 out of the 12 that don't use the custom dice. Now, Games Workshop does have a few games that use custom dice. I think it was Shadowspire was the one that I think I mentioned early on, that uses custom dice, Warhammer Shadowspire. But I was very surprised when I went to do this this commentary, and I noticed how many of Games Workshop games, admittedly a lot of them are being republished, that they still use your traditional D6 dice. And what that tells me is that Games Workshop is very smart, because some of the best loved games on shelves today are Games Workshop and Citadel games. And I think 10 or 15 or 20 years from now, some of the best loved games that are still going to be being pulled off the shelves and still be played are going to be Games Workshop dice. Or Games Workshop games, I'm sorry. Anyway, take care, guys. God bless.